Okay. Shavua Tov to everyone, a good tavach. We are beginning. We have a lot to do today. We are, let's close the door.
Yeah.
Okay, today we're going to have a class, as we mentioned last week, on koshering for Pesach. Okay, koshering the kitchen, koshering items, vessels, utensils, cutlery, everything that's to do with koshering. I also asked everyone to prepare questions to try to stump the rabbi, and I hope everyone did so. So how much time do we need at the end of class for this? The hard questions are the easy ones. I'll just say I don't know, and that'll end it. But the ones I have to answer for may take some time. Did anyone prepare questions? Yes? Okay, so let's designate the last 20 minutes for questions all around on Pesach. Okay? So please remind me in an hour from now if we're going over time. Okay, we're going to review what we did so far last week and continue from where we left off. My goal is today to cover as much as possible, if not everything that relates to koshering, at least in a summarized version. Once again, all the information is in the book. Okay, I brought one book for sale if anyone wants to purchase it. Okay, right. Okay, no problem. The full Schleiben. Okay. But we have more books you're welcome to get. All the information, it should be in the book, hopefully. And so let's begin. Okay, so last week so far we did a little bit introductory material on the laws of koshering. And what we said is that anything you don't plan on koshering, you have to put away. And I think we emphasized this last week, that the wording in the Shulchan Aruch is to put it away in an uncommon area that you would go into, meaning don't leave it in your normal cupboard. That's number one. Number two, lock it up, like with a key and a bolt. And number three, hide the key. Those are the three steps. Now, if you have a mansion with a lot of different rooms and a lot of areas and a lot of closets, that's the best thing to do. That's what you should do. But if you're living like a lot of us, which is in Sardine land, where we're crammed in these little apartments, and we don't have a lot of space, there is no other closet to put the stuff into. This is it, So if you don't have another closet, then due to lack of choice, then obviously that's your only choice, is to leave it there, but you still have to do whatever you can to bolt it. Putting just a piece of tape does not suffice. You should try to tie it up. You can use those plastic handcuffs that the police use, to lock it up. Yeah, do whatever you can. Tape does not do the job. You just pull it open. And utensils. All chametz utensils that have not been koshered are not Pesachdik. Again, we said according to Halacha, we have a 3-step, very strict segregation rule. If due to lack of choice, space, etc., you're not able to do the 3-step rule, at least do some of the rules. Which, as we said, you try to lock it up. You can tie 2 drawers to each other. You can tie 2, do whatever you can to try to get rid of it, so it's out of the way. Because Rabbanim do get questions. My son, by mistake, took the chametz pan, and these questions happen because they weren't properly segregated. So, again, a lot of these halachas, just like in secular law, lahavdil, a lot of the laws are written in blood. So a lot of these halachas are written due to stumbling. People stumble. They said, okay, so therefore we're going to, enact this as a guardrail. This applies even if you're selling your kalim to a guy, that you have a contract that sells the kalim to a guy. It makes no difference. It doesn't matter if it's the guy's kalim or your kalim. All chametz kalim that you may use have to be segregated in this form. This we discussed last week. Yeah.
You have to write mechor on it?
On vessels?
Yeah,
On vessels, we don't sell vessels. In Chabad, we do not sell vessels, as we suspect. Basically, in many star mechirs, we don't sell vessels because of the suspicion that if you sell it and you buy it back, then it will need tefillas kalim. But we don't rule that way, but nonetheless, there's also no need to sell the vessels. There's no reason to sell it. Should I sell my books? Should I sell, I don't know, my computer? It's not chametz. The vessel contains taste of chametz, which you're not allowed to eat, but you're allowed to own. I don't transgress anything if I owned a chametz vessel. There's no transgression. Where's the chametz?
As long
it's taste. That's kalim. There's no the only time you would need to sell a vessel is, let's say, it has a kazayas of chametz stuck to it, or even less than kazayas, and you can't get it off. This can happen with vessels that are used with doughy materials, and you're not able to get off the dough. That's when the Alter Rebbe says just sell the whole thing in that case. And then we rely that even if you sell, you don't have to do tvila because he doesn't actually have access to it. If the guy actually came and said, "Give me all the vessels I bought," and you gave it to him, and then he returned after Pesach, he would have to kosher it and do tefillah to it. You have to do both things. Yes, but if he doesn't, then you don't have to do anything.
How do you feel about like if I buy like coffee now that's kosher at Pesach and I use it with a plastic spoon and start using things that I'm going to use also on Pesach as long as I have nothing else touching it? Because you don't want to have,
it's a great question. We're actually going to cover it in the men's class on Tuesday nights. And it's not on our chapter, but save it for again, last 20 minutes. Write down the question and we'll do it then. I want to just focus now on koshering only. Okay. Min adin, you may be surprised, but it actually is permitted in certain situations to use clean chametz vessels for cold Pesach food. I know nobody would actually do this, so I'm just letting you know that from a strict perspective of halacha, if I have a clean Pesach, clean chametz plate, and someone accidentally went ahead and put cold potato salad on it, you don't have to panic. You don't have to have an anxiety attack. You don't even have to call the Rav. Just eat the potatoes. And if you don't want to, throw them out. If you don't feel good, if your conscience doesn't feel good about it, then throw it out. But there's no halachic question here. The plate was clean. There's no chametz on it. There's no, invisible, science fiction transference of taste that occurred from the chametz plate into the food. So, and even the chatchila Alter Rebbe rules. If you don't have a plate, if you know someone who knows halacha and he knows he doesn't have any Pesach plates, there's only chametz plates, but they're clean, you can actually have a Pesach meal on the plate, unless it's made of earthenware. Earthenware plates we avoid. The minhag is to avoid completely. So the truth is, most china is earthenware. But let's say it was a glass plate, or it was, let's say a pot. Pot is made of metal, so then it would be different. It would, even according to the minhag, the chatchila would be mutter. But again, don't try this at home. I'm just saying this for the b'diavad. Try this at home, the chatchila, I'll get into big trouble. This is a rule not just by chametz; it's a general rule by all non-kosher. If you are going to a tzimmer and the stuff is not kosher, you have non-religious people, non-Jewish people who have stayed there, use the stuff. So can I go ahead and eat eat a potato salad? Okay, on the plate. The answer is if the plate is clean, then since this is only being done on occasion and because you have no other plate available, it's mutter min adin. I'm only talking about cold food, absolutely.
You would do this?
Hot food, I've done it, sure. I've done it before. Yeah. When you have nothing else available, what am I supposed to do? Eat with my hands?
Plastic plates, you couldn't eat it.
If you don't have.
Wow.
If you don't have it, everything's clean, it's mutter.
Fine.
However, again, hot we don't put on, and also a davar charif. Let's say I have onions or garlic, I wouldn't put it on either. But otherwise, it's not a problem. Okay. But that was just to know for b'diavad, we'll also learn when to have the anxiety attacks here and when not to. So this is definitely not a case. You don't need to have the anxiety attack in this situation. Okay, we already mentioned last week as well that for non-eating purposes, that you don't need to kosher anything, so you don't need to kosher your Nagelwasser cups or anything. You want to clean it because they have chametz all the time. You want to buy new ones, that's great, it's a big hitter, but they don't need koshering. There's no issue with using the same Nagelwasser basin for chametz and during Pesach. You don't plan on eating anything in it ever, not during the year, not during Pesach, so it is not a problem.
Can you use a Kiddush cup too?
No, Kiddush cup, you drink from it, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss Kiddush cup today. We touched upon it last week. Yeah, we'll touch upon it last week. We'll discuss it more today. We finished off last week discussing regarding new vessels, and we said first, number one, there is no need to purchase all new kalim for Pesach. Some say that doing so is a hiddur. Others say that no, we have specifically the laws of koshering for this reason, and you can go in and kosher. We all agree that buying new vessels is more expensive than koshering, but on the other hand, it saves a lot of time. So you do what you want. Do what works for you. Some are makbid to kosher at least one thing to emphasize the laws of koshering, that it's a real thing, And it's not like a deichik or b'diavad. It's a real thing that the Torah gave us instructions to do. We also discussed last week regarding if new vessels need koshering or not. We said that some people are accustomed to kosher all new vessels by cast iron cookware that you didn't verify that's made from non-meat oils. It must be koshered properly beforehand with lib and kal. However, all other kalim, some are accustomed to do so, some are not accustomed to do so. Everyone has upon whom to rely, whether to be lenient or to be stringent. So now we're up to what we're up to, and let's begin.
They can only be made of certain materials, right, to kosher it?
Yes, that's what we're going to go through today. What can be kosher and what cannot be kosher. So someone who koshers all new vessels, and he bought a vessel made of unkosherable material, so he has a contradiction there. What does he do? Okay. We're going to begin with I think the most important rule of the entire laws of koshering right now. Very useful and very important. I'm going to read the rule out loud. A vessel or surface that is not kosher or was used for chametz, meaning not kosher, it's treif, like during the year, so it was used for treif food, or was used for chametz, must only be koshered if food will come in direct contact with it, or will come in contact in a way that it can absorb taste from it, such as through liquid. Thus, if one does not desire to kosher a certain item, or the item is not kosherable, like we go through the materials, you see it's not a kosherable material, then it suffices to properly cover the item with a material that would obstruct any transfer of taste. What this means is as follows. Koshering is only required according to Jewish law if you plan on having a direct shidduch between your food and the vessel. There will be direct contact between your food and the vessel. If wherever you plan on putting an intervening material that obstructs between the vessel and the food, you don't have to kosher it. Now, this, let's say, for example, I'll give a practical example regarding counters. While some counters are made, like the old counters are made of real marble, which is a very kosherable material, but for the same reason is a material that can mold inside and needs to be, I forgot the wording they use, but it needs to be like fixed every 6 months. You have to bleach it or kill all the, because it has pores, and the pores has food, you don't see it, and that can cause, if you ever have a stench coming out of the counter, it's because of the pores. The pores have gathered food, and they begin. It's like you ever know something's a crock pot? Like the smell is embedded because there's holes. It's it's holy, as they say. But there's pores. There's real pores, and that's why So that's regarding, and that's why it can be koshered, because the same way the pores allow the food to come in, the pores will also allow everything to come out through koshering it. But a lot of counters today in the modern kitchen are installed using what's called it's manufactured stone. It's granite that's basically ground to like sand, and they make that into a countertop. The advantage of that is, and that's why a lot of people use it today in construction, in kitchens, unless you order otherwise, that's usually the status quo today. The reason that they use it is because it closes, there are no pores, so you don't have to fill it every 6 months, you don't have to cure it every 6 months, you don't have to worry about spoilage and bacteria growing inside the stone. It's but on the other hand, it's not kosherable. It's not kosher material, and a lot of modern homes have it. This is not just a problem for Pesach. It's a problem. You're renting a new apartment. You bought a new apartment or a new home. The kitchen was already used by people who weren't Jewish or weren't religious, so it's treif. So what do you do in such a situation? So it's not kosherable. The surface is not kosherable. So one way of still being able to use it is simply to kosher it anyway. It doesn't help, but it doesn't hurt either, right? Spill hot water over it, it doesn't hurt. And then make sure not to put any hot food directly on the counter. And the good news is that usually we never put hot food directly on the counter. No one takes out their pizza and puts the pizza directly on the counter. No one takes, usually, nothing to do with kosher, just because who knows what's on the counter, and maybe it's wet, and etc. So we always usually have something on top. The only time that it would be a problem would be if I want to take a hot pot off the fire and put it directly on the counter. That could be a problem. If your counter is wet, liquid moisture is a bridge that causes taste to transfer from your counter into your food. So if the counter is treif, that means we have treif taste transferring into your pot. Now the good news is that in the regular year, this also isn't a problem. Because how long ago was this treif taste entered into the counter. Over 24 hours? Over 24 hours. So the treif taste is considered not benyeme, it's considered spoiled. Having spoiled treif taste enter into your pot doesn't treif up your pot. So therefore, bottom line is that if a person is moving into an apartment and they have this manufactured granite stone countertop, what do we tell them to do? We said just pour hot water over it. Again, that doesn't kosher it, but it makes us feel good, and it cleans it. And then go ahead. We tell them, we advise them, please try to avoid placing a hot pot directly on it. By the way, I'll tell you another reason, nothing to do with kashrus. From experience, I've seen that when you put the hot pots directly on it, you can break the stone. So it's not a very good idea. It's a very expensive stone, and you can't just like replace the area. You have to replace the entire counter. So it's not a good idea ever to put a hot pot directly on top of the counter, also for financial reasons. But also for kashrus reasons, because we don't want to enter into this whole benyeme 24 hours spoiled treif. We don't want to eat not spoiled or not unspoiled treif. We don't want to eat any treif. So the best thing is not to put it on directly on top. Always have a trivet, always have something there. It's a very simple solution, and everything. And otherwise, you can use the counter as usual. You have nothing to worry about. However, with Pesach, it's a little tricky, because in Pesach we rule that even spoiled chametz is treif. Ashkenazim, that's how we rule. We're very machmir. For example, if a person went ahead and he by mistake cooked, he cooked his Pesach stew for the night of the Seder, and Rachmana litzlan, he used a chametz pot. He used the chametz pot. It was clean. He just got confused. They cleaned it. Everything. They know for sure there was no chametz in it, but it was a chametz pot. What do you do? So if this happened on Pesach and this was an Ashkenazi, the answer is your food is treif. And if this happened to a Sephardi, the answer is your food is kosher. So the Ashkenazi should sell it to the Sephardi. Yeah, give it to the Sephardi. And of course, you should let him know, because many Sephardim are machmir also in this. So he has to let him know this is based on the kula of the mechaber. Are you willing to eat it? And then we'll see how loyal he is to the Sephardi ruling or not. But bottom line is that because of this issue, the counter is a problem. Because here, if we put a Pesach pot directly on top of it and it's wet, we just treifed it up. It's treif. So because of this is where the solution that we just read comes in, and that is you only need to kosher something. There can only be transfers of taste if it will have direct contact. However, if we put tin foil or PVC or a piece of wood, yeah, it's like a plasticky material. If we cover our counter with it, then it's impossible for taste to transfer. So we can use it even if we don't kosher it. We can use it. Menadin, there is no need to kosher a material, a surface that we don't plan on putting anything directly on top of. So we can go ahead and cover it, even if it's made of manufactured, it's called engineered stone. That's the word. Engineered stone. We can go ahead and just cover it with, again, PVC, wood, wood platform, or tin foil is also good. That's fine. A sheet is no good. The Alter Rebbe explicitly writes a bed sheet or woven material is too thin. It doesn't solve the problem. Well, anything can move, and that's why whatever you put, you have to make sure it doesn't move. Now, if you're using tinfoil or PVC, so the order is like this. Before you put it on, whenever you want to use this trick, that you can't kosher something or you don't want to kosher it, and you want to cover it instead, you have to make sure, it's a few steps, okay? We always try to kosher everything, because often it's actually a machlekes if it's kosherable, so we don't kosher it, but you benefit according to the opinion who says it is kosherable. So it's like an insurance policy. So the best thing is just to try to kosher everything you can if you're able to, even if you plan on using this covering tip that we mentioned, okay? So let's talk about the counter. You just pour boiling hot water on it, okay? And it's koshered in that way. You then go ahead and dry the surface. We don't want to put the PVC or tinfoil on a wet surface. The reason is, I'll explain, because if there is liquid between the surface, the counter, and the PVC or wood or tinfoil, and there's also liquid on top between that and your pot that you put on top, then we still have a direct line of transfer, and that's a problem. So we want to make sure that A, at the time that we put it on, it's dry, and B, that liquid won't have a way of seeping in. So we want to close off the sides in a way that no liquid. So you can use Scotch tape or whatever you want, glue, staples, whatever works, in order to close it off, that liquid won't seep under. Now, even if liquid does seep under, if you just follow a rule, which is what we follow in our home, and everybody knows this, that we don't put any hot stuff directly on top of the covering, then once again, you avoid the issue. Because, if I'm using, let's say, if I'm putting a trivet on top and I'm putting top with a trivet, you avoid the issue in this way. You just never put hot directly on top, and you never have a possibility of a bridge, even if there is moisture in between. But nonetheless, we should dry the surface. You then cover it with a thick piece of tinfoil. Thin piece of tinfoil tears, so it's not going to really help, so it should be a little bit thick. And again, you fasten the covering material, so that's step 4. Fasten it with tape so liquid can't escape under it. And even so, number 5 is, even with all this, throughout Pesach, you should avoid putting hot foods or hot pots directly on top. Use a trivet or something of the like. So this is how you can get away without koshering, or with koshering something that's not kosherable and still making use of it on Pesach. Now, what about, so that's why I said this was our major rule that we can use and implement all the time. Technically, this would even work for a pot. We can clean a chametz pot, cover the inside with thick tin foil, it's dry inside, and cook Pesach food in it. Now don't try this. Yeah. That's if you like doing halachic tricks, like to test people. That's a halachic trick. But, a Rav who gets a question, I cooked into my chametz pot, they usually ask, well, was there a line of tinfoil in between? People don't usually do that. So it's, you just use a Pesach pot. Because the food is not touching the chametz surface. Now, if there's liquid in between, then you're right, there's a bridge. But if it's dry between the tinfoil and the pot, and the food is only touching the tinfoil, then I have no contact. It's not like some miraculous, voodoo transfer. It's science. If you don't have a bridge, it doesn't transfer. Now, we don't have to play around with the game and look for loopholes. We can just use a Pesach pot, and that's what everyone should do. I'm just trying to depict the situation of how this would apply even in that type of case. And by the way, we laugh about it, but in certain areas of the world, they actually have to rely on all these Ateirim because they have no choice. Wow. When Bachram go to different areas of Russia or anywhere else in the world, very primitive areas to kasher for Pesach, they're not always able to do Pesach Seder there. They have to rely on a lot of different kulas, a lot of different things that are letters of the law, because they don't have the luxuries of doing everything mahajim and mahajim there. Such as, I'll just give an example, in a lot of public Zdarim, they purchase grapes and have religious Jews squeeze them Erev Pesach to create grape juice and then boil it. That's just, there's no choice because they don't have any wine available or grape juice available that's made by a Jew. Now, what about in a case that it is kosherable? Do I have to cover it? So this we touched upon a little bit last week. Let's say I have a marble counter. It's a completely 100% kosherable. I pour boiling hot water on it. I use what's called Evan Malubin. I can use a iron or something else to go through it. We'll discuss that later. It's koshered. I koshered my surface. Do I still have to go ahead and cover it after it's koshered? Answer is minadin, no. If you koshered your counter, it's koshered. You can go ahead and use it. That's a different question. If I koshered my pot for Pesach, can I cook now Pesach food in my koshered pot? No. Or do I have to put a tin foil inside and cover it? Of course you can kosher directly in it, so you don't have to cover it. It's kosher. Nonetheless, it is customary amongst many people to cover all surfaces that they're able to cover, like a countertop or a table, because we suspect maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed a speck. Counters are often very difficult to make sure they're clean. It looks clean because it's very camouflaged, but in any event, this is just a minhag that is recorded in some poskim, and it is customary to do, to try to cover everything. It's like another added insurance policy because we hate chametz so much during Pesach, and we want to get as far away from him as possible.
You have to kosher the table, like the wooden table?
So tables are similar to the surface. If they don't really have to be kosher, we'll discuss soon. We're going to go through a list of things, okay, of what needs to be kosher, what doesn't, and what it would fall under. Okay. Before we begin going through a list of the appliances and items in the home, I'm going to just give a general introduction into the different forms of koshering. What are the different available forms of koshering for something? When does an item need what form of koshering? To what item needs what? What materials can be koshered? And then we'll go through the list. Okay, so let's begin. We have 6 different types of kosherings available in the Jewish market, that in halacha, that can be done to a food and to an item. And the general rule is that the Torah taught us kaboilo kach poltei. The way it went in, that's the way it goes out. The same door that it went in with, that's the same door it exits with, meaning the same type, the same form of transfer, of absorption of taste it received. The way that it absorbed the taste, that's the way it releases and expels the taste. So there's 6 different kinds based on the way the item, the vessel absorbed. One is called libun. I'm going from top to bottom, most severe to less severe. So the most severe is called libun chamer, which is like, it's literally the severe whitening, meaning that you blowtorch the item until it becomes bright red or white due to the fire. Okay, this is called libun chamer. This is the most severe form of koshering, meaning if you did this, you're for sure covered, no matter what. So if you did libun chamer to your wooden spoon, you don't have to worry, it's for sure kosher. You don't have a wooden spoon anymore, it's another story. But it's for sure, kosher it is, that you don't have to worry about. And so to libun chamer covers everything. Nothing will escape. All taste will become absolutely destroyed if you do libun chamer to it. Now, obviously, it's not a good idea to do libun chamer to all your vessels, because you may not have any left. So when you don't need it, obviously this is not something that we're going to be doing. So the second one is called libun kal. Again, still with the blowtorch, but it's of less intensity. We put it in libun kal. It only has to be heated enough to the point that the opposite side becomes yatzeledes, meaning if, let's say, it's a pot that I'm doing libun kal to, so I touch the outside of the pot and it's really hot, I'm good. I fulfilled my libun kal obligation. So it doesn't have to become hot to the point that it becomes white or bright red, which is very, very hot. It suffices just for the other side to become hot. Hagala. The third one is hagala, where I put the item into boiling water. Okay. You don't need any fire at all. You use water. The fourth is called ire klirishin with even malubin. This is, I'm pouring boiling water onto it using, and even malubin means a white stone. Basically, this is used in exchange for hagala. If I can't do hagala to something, let's say it's very wide or very long, so I'm not able to put it in a pot. I don't own a pot wide and long enough to do it. Let's say a counter. So then I pour boiling water, and in order to get the same effect of the boiling, because as I'm pouring it, it cools off, so I use a hot stone to go over the area, and that hot stone then boils, very similar to a sauna, right? You're in a sauna, it's very hot, and then you pour water, and it sizzles the water, right? So that's what we want to do. We want to sizzle. So how do we practically accomplish this? Irrigation and balloon can be accomplished with simply using a iron. You iron the surface together with the boiling water at the same time. You pour boiling water and you iron it, and that boils it up. Or you can simply use a kumkum, the Israeli kumkumim, that have the boiling coil inside. So this is the old school ones, not the modern ones. That the coil is inside and you're holding onto it. It's boiling the whole time. So as you're pouring, it's still attached to the boiling coil. In other kumkum, you take it off, it's no longer attached. So once you're pouring it, it's gone from the red hot item.
It should be a Pesach kumkum, not.
So we kosher it first. So you should kosher it first, or be Pesach dik. But if it's Pesach dik, then you can't use it for Pesach.
Right. So that's.
So we have a koshering one just for koshering, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You can go ahead and kosher it. The same. How do you kosher it? Yeah, you put water in it until it's onto the very top, and you boil it until it overflows. It may break the machine, but I'm just saying it is physically possible. You're saying made of plastic? Yeah, I understand. But the whole idea that it needs koshering is itself a chumrah. It's itself a chumrah. But the person wants to be macha. The best thing is just to get a new one for use of Pesach that you don't use for koshering at all. A next form of koshering is called mila ve'ira. This is basically that you fill the item up with water, let it soak for 24 hours, and you switch it and you do this for 3 days in a row. This is another type of koshering that can be done on certain vessels. And the last but not least, and which is the easiest one that can be done, is called hadacha. Simply just wash it clean. Okay? So let's now go through what needs what and how is it done. And then afterwards we'll go into specifically what can and can't be koshered and how do we kosher our appliances and different things. So the rule by Libun Chamer is like this. Any item that has absorbed chametz without liquid, meaning like baking, let's say I have a pan that I use for baking cakes, or I have a baking pan that I use for baking challahs, so it's absorbed chametz directly without liquid, it needs to be kosher through Libun Chamer, which for practical purposes means that you pretty much can't kosher baking pans that were used for baking chametz, because do Libun Chamer to it, you won't have a baking pan left. So unless you have a baking pan of such sturdy material that it can sit through that, it's basically not really realistic. An oven is another item that needs Libun Chamer because we have chametz that's baked in it, chametz that falls on the surfaces without any liquid. And so to a grates, the stovetop grates also need Libun Chamer. Again, that means it needs to be blowtorched till it turns red or white. And practically, the way this can be fulfilled is if you have a self-cleaning oven, you just turn on the self-cleaning cycle. Again, this is only self-cleaning, not continuous cleaning, not to get confused. Continuous cleaning only reaches about 400, 500 degrees. It does not reach 900 degrees Fahrenheit as required for Libun Chamer, and therefore it doesn't help. So it has to be a self-cleaning oven. If you have a self-cleaning oven, it destroys everything inside. If you want, you can throw your baking pans in there, your grates in there. It'll also do it to that as well. And you've officially koshered your grates and your baking pans. But I suggest baking pans, just get new ones for Pesach. It's not worth the hassle or the risk. However, grates, that's something a little more difficult if you don't have a new stovetop. But once again, we already learned the previous trick. Even if you can't kosher something, all you have to do is cover it. So that's why I don't have a self-cleaning oven. And I'm not sitting there with a blowtorch for an hour and a half until the grates turn red hot. So what do? Just wash it clean it very well, use bleach, right? Cover it with tin foil in a way that the tin foil won't open. In such a situation, what do I have? I have a pot sitting on top of tin foil, and it's not touching the chametz, it's not touching the grates. In that situation, this is where we're relying on, it's similar to what I said before, where you can technically lie in the inside of your chametz pot. That's exactly what we're doing here. So even if we didn't kosher it properly, we have the insurance that the pot is not sitting directly on the grate. If you did Libun Chamer, they can sit directly on the grate, not a problem. You don't need to go ahead and put tin foil on your grates because you koshered it. But if you couldn't kosher it properly, then the only way to use it would be to cover it.
You mean the grates on top that are exposed to the flame?
Yes.
Because tinfoil burns.
If you use thick tin foil, many people do it, and it remains the whole Pesach. Maybe you'll have to switch it once or twice, but it doesn't. It stays. It's metal, thick metal. Try it. It stays. Yeah, you can get a Pesach blech, but it's kind of hard to cook with a blech. But you can just simply individually cover the grates, and or you can just buy a whole new stovetop. There's different options. You could decide to do what you do. I'm just giving out what our options are available. You get to decide what you want to do. You can also buy a new Pesach home. You can buy a home just for Pesach if you want, and just avoid this whole thing. But technically, if you want, you can simply do as we said. Even if you can't do Libun Chamer, you just cover it with tin foil. And even a lot of people who do Libun Chamer still cover it. As I said before, it's a minute to cover everything, right? The hiddur to cover everything.
Is it so it's not enough to turn on, to put the grates on and turn on all the burns?
I mean, you can. It's nice to do that. It'll heat up your house a little bit, but it's not going to do Libun Chamer to the grates.
It's not going to get it.
Is it going to get? Have you ever seen your grates get red hot?
No. I think they wouldn't survive. Like, none of the materials they use now, especially what you can buy here, could survive that. They work.
Right.
I've seen them work.
Right. Well, if that's the case, then absolutely, then they need Libun Chamer and can't have Libun Chamer done to them. So the only option is to cover. Cover it with tin foil or get replacement ones. When you buy the stove, tell the guy, I want to get 2 sets of grates. Please order me another set of grates. I'll pay for it, and it'll save it for Pesach. And then you avoid the whole headache. That's the best thing. Libun kal. When do we require libun kal? Which we said is again using a torch, but you don't have to wait until it gets red hot. And libun kal is something you can do to the grates, but it doesn't work to the grates because it needs libun chamer. But technically, yes, the grates would get hot enough that if you touch it, you'll burn yourself. So if it only needed libun kal, then that's what we'd be able to do. So libun kal is actually, it's not, there's no case that you have to do libun kal. Libun kal is an alternative for hagala. So in all cases that you can simply dip it into boiling water and kosher it in that method, you have an alternative. Instead of using boiling water, you're a dry guy, you like using fire, so you can just blowtorch it in libun kal method. That is also a valid alternative. Sometimes you actually have to do libun kal. Let's say you have rust on the area, so putting it in boiling water is not going to get rid of the rust that's covering over the chametz. The piece of chametz is still there. Boiling water, all it does is that it removes taste. It doesn't destroy physical chametz. So rust, we suspect that there's chametz under the rust. In that case, you put a fire on top of it, burn anything that's there, and then you can do hagala to the vessel. Hagala is pretty much, that's our main form of koshering done to majority of our vessels, which have not absorbed taste directly through chametz without liquid in between. Let's see, I cook pasta in a pot, all my eating utensils, they are not mainly used for dry chametz, and therefore they do not need to have libun chamer. They only need to have libun kal done to them. So, or hagala. So that's where I'll be doing hagala to them, and they are kosherable in that method. Irik Rishon, we said before, that method, the fourth method, is used as an alternative to hagala when you can't do hagala because it's too wide, it can't fit into the pot. So we're going to talk about tables and counters again, we'll get into that. Milu ve'iri shalosh pamim, which is again filling up for 24 hours 3 times. It can be done if the only kashrus issue with the vessel is that it absorbed chametz through liquid sitting in it for 24 hours. Let's say I have a cup that I drink beer from it. It's a metal cup that I use for beer. So I don't know if such a thing exists, but let's say it does. So if the beer stayed in for 24 hours, but I never have hot beer or anything hot. So the way to kosher it is you fill it up with water. You leave the water in for 24 hours, then switch it. You do this 3 times. It's called milu ve'iri. Practically, it's a headache. Just do hagala. Just go up a step. Do the higher level that covers this instead of going through this headache. And the last but not least, to say before, is hadacha. And all vessels that never absorbed chametz, they just had chametz contact them, sit in them, but never actually united and penetrated them, such as plates and cups, etc., that I never used for hot chametz, and you only use for cold food, and the cold chametz food never sat in it for 24 hours with liquid, then the plate itself is kosher. It's just dirty, so if you clean it, it's good to go. You don't have to do anything else to it. So anything that didn't absorb direct chametz does not need any other level of koshering. How do you kosher it? Through cleaning it. Cleaning is also a form of koshering. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the appliances very soon. We're almost there.
So a glass dinner plate can have...
The glass I'm going to discuss. Materials we're going to get to in a moment. Let me just see what we have left here.
We're keeping questions to the end?
Not related to koshering till the end, yeah. But I suggest also koshering because we'll probably cover it. We'll probably cover it. Let's just wait. Anything I don't cover by 20 minutes too, I'll take.
I don't think you're going to cover this.
I'll just write it down. Okay. Okay, regarding materials, what materials may be koshered, so the rule is like this. Earthenware, pottery, china, and like china dishes and the like, they're all unkosherable. The minhag is not even to use it for cold Pesach foods. Get rid of it, put it away. Lock it up, throw away the key. right? Hide the key, not throw it away. Hide the key. That's regarding earthenware. So examples of that would be the crock pot, mugs, okay, all chinaware, all of this stuff. There's no way to kosher it. The only way to kosher it is by doing libun gomer to it, libun gomer, which is probably make a new size, a new shape of the cup, or a new shape of the item after you're done with it. If not, just explode it and you have nothing left. So all earthenware is gone. Clay vessels, I don't think anyone uses it anymore, right? No one is using clay vessels, but it is technically kosherable if you want to know. Okay, rock and stone are kosherable materials. Slabs of rock, that's what I said before, right? The marble counters are kosherable. If you have marble floors, you can kosher your floors, right? You have marble floors, it's kosherable material. However, that's only slabs. Anything that's what's called hot dog stone, which is stone that's basically all the pieces of material that are crushed together and turned into a cement. That engineered stone cannot be kosher, we said before. And so you have to go through one of the other things that we said of covering it, etc. Wood is technically kosherable. However, due to that wood contains often a lot of cracks and it's difficult to clean. So the custom is that all wood vessels that were used with chametz, with like flour and stuff like that, we don't kosher. We don't kosher, or we sand them down. Sand them down, and if you notice in the matzah bakery, that's what they do, because all the wooden vessels that they use pretty much are possibly touching chametz, because after 18 minutes, everything they touch becomes chametz. So they sand them down. The Mahadran ones, they just buy new ones, and that's why they're so expensive, because they're actually using new rollers for every 18 minutes. Every batch has new rollers. But other ones, they're not this stringent, they just sand them down, and that's how it's koshered. Metal vessels, all metals can be koshered, whether you have gold, silver, copper, iron, stainless steel. Did I miss anything? All metals are kosherable, okay? Again, how do you kosher it? Depends on its use. If you used it to bake chametz, we already said it needs libun gomer. If you used it just to cook pasta, then you can go ahead and do a gola. Glass, we've mentioned this a few times in previous classes, is a major debate between the Ashkenazi and Sephardi poskim. Ashkenazim rule glass is not kosherable. Sephardim rule glass is not needed to be kosher. So Sephardim go ahead and they just clean their glass dishes and use them for Pesach and for meat to milk. They don't have any separation between these things. However, for Ashkenazim, we view on the opposite extreme that glass is unkosherable. Not just that it needs to be kosher, but it can't be koshered. And therefore, all of our glass materials we put away. So if you are of Ashkenazi custom, your husband's Ashkenazi, we don't use anything of glass, we put it away. The only time you can use something of glass if it was never used with chametz. So let's say I have.
Your glass isn't used for water.
Right here.
You could drink it.
Right, so drink, right.
That's
So if I never used it for chametz, then technically it's not a problem. But let me explain to you what it means never used for chametz. Let me really define what it means to be halachically accurate, to actually go ahead and just clean the vessel. It only needs hadacha, right, and use it for Pesach. That means the following. Number one, you never put hot chametz into it. Check. Number two, you never had chametz soak in it. Check. Meaning like number one, I never dipped a cracker or piece of cake in my tea and leave it on top of my counter for 24 hours unnoticing. One second. And possibly the chametz that's soaking in the tea soaked for 24 hours. So I didn't do that either. Number three, I never had it soak in my sink. I always do dishes within 24 hours. It never soaked in my sink or on a chametz surface with liquid for 24 hours. So if I've gone through all those checks, then yes, all you have to do is wash it and you're good to go. But bottom line, do we suspect that chametz did soak in it? So the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch regarding cups, since it's possible that it did have chametz soaking for 24 hours, he says it should be kosher. But again, it all depends on how, is it something common that you do at home? Is it something not common that you do? I personally do kosher my Kiddush cup, even though I do not dip anything into my wine. My Kiddush cup, because you never know what you washed it with. You used hot water. It doesn't hurt to kosher. But with glass, it's not kosherable, and if you specifically want to use it, then you would have to go through this checklist, and if the checklist is good, you went through everything, then yes, all you have to do is clean it, and you can use it. Even for Ashkenazim, as once again, this glass did not absorb anything. So if it didn't absorb treif, didn't absorb chametz, then why can't I use it? It's as if it's new.
would boil the Kiddush cup, yeah?
Yeah, a Kiddush cup would only need Hagala.
Oh.
It doesn't even need Hagala technically if you went through the checklist, it doesn't need anything. But if you want to kosher it, because maybe just in case, then yes, you would do Hagala to it in boiling water. Ceramic, not kosherable. Enamel, not kosherable. So if you have metal, stainless steel, etc., vessels that are glazed with, covered with ceramic or enamel or porcelain, they become non-kosherable. Okay, so it's very important. We have a lot of non-stickware cookware today, and they are covered with enamel or ceramic or porcelain. The only way to kosher them is through chamer, which basically will destroy them, so they're not kosherable material. Same thing with Teflon; it cannot be koshered. Plastic is a big machlekes in Pesachim. Bottom line is that lechatchila we do not kosher plastic, obviously not through Lubin Gomer and not even through Agala. We do not kosher it at all for Pesach. But those who are lenient have upon whom to rely. In the army, they are lenient and they do kosher plastic. All the plastic vessels are koshered for Pesach, and there are Pesachim who rule it's okay. They have upon whom to rely. Okay, we're now going to go through the list of the actual things inside your kitchen. How do you kosher them, etc.
What about you have like a pot, a stainless steel, the top handle is like plasticky material, whatever it's made of, it's like plastic.
So the handle, we don't cook inside the handle, and therefore all you have to do with the handle, it would be you just have to clean it, make sure it's cleaned, and wash it down. However, if the handle does have, let's say you have a handle that screws in a way that the bottom of it does face the pot, then that it has absorbed. Anything that has absorbed is a problem. It would need to actually have Hagala done to it. It will need to be koshered.
It's not kosher.
And then, one second, and anyways, the cover needs to be koshered regardless. So what's the cover made out of? Metal?
Yeah, metal.
Okay, so kosher the whole thing.
But
But you're saying because it's made of plastic. Yeah, so that you don't have to worry about. That you don't have to worry about. So you can just, again, if the plastic is not on the inside, it's just on the outside to help lift it up, then you don't have to worry about it. You just, when you do Hagala to the cover, it covers everything. Okay, so let's begin. Cutlery, forks, spoons, and knives. The way to kosher them, assuming that they're made of metal. We're not talking about plastic here. We're not talking about wood, and we're not talking about earthenware. Okay, so assuming it's made of regular metal, stainless steel, gold, silver, all you have to do is dip them into boiling water, Hagala, and that's how it's koshered. However, regarding knives, it's a mitzvah and a mufcher not to kosher them and buy new ones. Knives. It's a mitzvah and a mufcher to just buy new knives, and the reason for that is because serrated knives have holes, and even non-serrated knives, they have a lot of times, they have edges in them, and therefore those are areas that gather food. If we had if we put them under a microscope and went into the material, you would see some horrible stuff inside your knife. And that is all from the leftover foods that it is from a naked eye you don't notice, but from a discerning eye of a microscope you will see. It's like those bed bugs that you never notice, but you put under a microscope and you see these horrible, 50-legged creatures. Another way to kosher a knife is simply to sharpen it. That really takes care of the problem. It gets rid of everything and the rust and everything. But nonetheless, the mitzvah mufcher is to simply buy new knives for Pesach and not kosher. But forks and spoons, even lechatchila, it may be koshered. Regarding cups, okay, once again, cups that have a chance of having been washed with chametz, having stayed in a sink with chametz 24 hours, or that you put chametz into them, which can happen with all the different types of foods that we eat. They can have chametz in them. That would be a problem and needs to be koshered through Hagala. We already said glass cups are not kosherable unless they don't need to be koshered, and then they are kosherable because they don't need to be koshered. And so you can use them. Regarding pots, so it all depends on the material. If it's a metal pot that's not coated with Teflon or enamel, then it is kosherable through whatever it was used for. So if you used it for baking malawas, it needs Libun Chamer done to it. If you used it for cooking liquid stuff, then all you need done to it is Hagala and it's kosher. The handles of the pot, lechatchila, do need to be koshered. meaning the sides of the pot or pan. I'm sorry, from level they do not need to be kosher, but nonetheless, lechatchila, we do hagala to everything. So we don't take off the handles, we just do it to everything with the handles, even though the handles didn't come into contact with the food, they're not cooking inside the handles. Nonetheless, we put everything into the boiling water. Pot covers, 100% need hagala done to them. So if you have a glass pot cover for your metal pot, that pot cover, if you're an Ashkenazi, is out of limits, it's out of bounds for Pesach, you can't use it. Frying pans, if you use them to bake chametz with only a little bit of oil or no oil, once again, they need Liban Gomer done to them, which is very difficult to achieve, so put them away for Pesach. A water urn. Do you need to kosher your water urn or get a new one? So technically you can say the water urn is used only for water, so why does it need to be kosher? I don't put anything else. I don't cook pasta in my water urn, right? The problem is that we have the following issues with the water urn. Number one, maybe it was put down while hot onto a chametz surface. Number two, some people warm up their challahs on top of the urns. If you do that, that's an officially chametz stika urn. It's chametz. It's pure chametz. You have chametz in your urn. Another possibility is that you poured hot water from your urn onto chametz. You want a tradition soup. Yeah, we have a nitzuk chibur l'chatchila. We're machmer on Pesach.
Last year, my rabbi in South Africa told me I could buy a tube, piece of tube, and put it on the spout.
What does that tube do? I'm not understanding.
So the tube is longer than, say the water comes out of here, so the tube is there and it comes down below the actual spout. That's not possible?
I'm not understanding what's being done. Let me just say like this: if the urn was not needs to be koshered and wasn't koshered, a tube wouldn't help, because it's the water's coming from chametz. Maybe the question was a different question. I'm not exactly sure what he was intending to do. But clearly, if the urn needs to be koshered, distancing the problem doesn't remove the problem. It just makes the problem travel more time to your cup. So if it's not chametz stick, it's not chametz stick. It doesn't need to be kosher. So I'm saying that on the one hand we would say, well, why does it need to be kosher? It's only for us. So I'm giving you cases of reasons of why an urn could be problematic that we may not even pay attention to, and it could have absorbed chametz and therefore cannot be used. I know I have heard from other rabbanim as well. They say, oh, you don't have to kosher water urns. There's no need. But it's not true, because there are a lot of these things that people do to the water urn that can turn it into chametz. As we just said, it's very common for people to pour hot water into a chametz dish. You have a tradition soup. You have an instant soup you want to warm up. Even if it doesn't have noodles, a lot of the powders comes from chametz material, chametz products. So you pour the hot water into it, and we say nitzak chibur lechatchila, we're machmer on Pesach, and therefore it would need to be koshered. If you ever washed it in a sink with chametz, together with chametz, once again it would be a problem. Bottom line is, there's a number of cases where this may be an issue. In all cases that you're not sure, you just go ahead and you kosher it by filling it to the top with water, boiling that water till it overflows. If you can't get it to overflow, then what you can do is you can boil up a piece of metal, get a piece of metal or a stone, put it on top of your stovetop, leave it there till it gets really, really hot, and then pour it inside until everything explodes, and then wear proper gear, obviously. I'm not liable. Ruined, right? It won't get ruined. No. Why would it get ruined? You just put it in, let it overflow, and then you've officially koshered your urn. But don't forget also to kosher the cover. So do hagala to the cover, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So my kettle is what you might have a kettle, right? So I'm just going to usually put it away for...
Yeah, if you don't want the hassle of koshering it, you either buy a new one or put it away. We can go back like the old days where they boiled water in a kettle on top of the fire.
Because people clean a lot of times with
I'll give you another example that the Rabbanim that have said that you can just go ahead and use your urn for Pesach didn't pay attention to. Citric acid. A lot of people use citric acid to clean the calcium that's there. So if you use citric acid, chametz. Use citric acid. It's derived from grain. If you use citric acid, you've just basically cooked chametz in your pot. It's literally, it's like cooking pasta in your pot, and someone's telling, oh, you can just go ahead because I only use it for water. So people have to have a little, foresight to understand what are all the things that the vessel is used for, and take this as an example of don't be so quick to say, well, I only use it for water. It's okay. Okay, a grater and a grinder, needs to be koshered. And the reason is you suspect that it was used to grind chametz, to grind a chara food that was cut with a chametz knife, even though I never ground chametz with my grater. Well, have you ever cut an onion with a chametz knife and then ground it? Of course. Well, that's another problem. So it needs to be koshered in such a way. It needs to be koshered with hagala. Obviously cleaned first. Whenever we require hagala, it has to be cleaned, spotless beforehand, and then koshered. The stove. Okay, how do we kosher a stove? So we already mentioned regarding the grates, you just do libun chamer to the grates if you're able to. If you can't, then you just cover it with tin foil. And that's what the custom, you just cover with tin foil. The burners technically don't have to be koshered because you're not putting any food on them. But the minhag is that we just turn it on, and with there you just turn on the fire for some time, and you can clean out the pores where the fire comes out from with toothpicks or needles. But if you see that all the flames are coming out nice and well, you don't need to do that. I mean, if the flame's coming out, it's burning anything that's there, you don't have to worry about any chametz being there. The stovetop surface is usually unkosherable of material unless it is stainless steel, in which case you can just clean it and then pour boiling water over it and do what's called and do hagala and iriklirishin instead of hagala, if you're able to do that. But the best thing is to do, even if it's not non-kosher materials, to do that and then go ahead and cover it, line it with tin foil. Once again, you have that assurance that anything that falls on it, has that separation. If you didn't go ahead and do so and it's not made of kosher material, it's treif, and all food that falls in it would be treif if it's hot.
So the glass top that you shut, that can be covered in tin foil.
Well, what do you use it for?
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes, no, nothing.
Right.
No,
But
that has
right,
to
a lot of
be
times though it
actually
gathers, a lot of the steam gathers. There's the best thing is to clean it, cover it, or get rid of it. We don't need a chametz because again, glass for Ashkenazim is not kosherable.
Yeah.
Right.
I just cover it then.
Okay.
Tin foil is.
Okay. Or you can put it away. Give them a vacation, a week
I can't
vacation.
put it in the way because you can't take it up, I don't think.
Oh, you can't take it. Okay, so you clean it and cover it. No problem.
Maybe could.
No problem. Okay.
Cover top.
Ovens. So ovens need libun chamer, we already said. If you don't have a self-cleaning cycle, you will not be able to accomplish it in your oven. So what do you do in such a situation? So the best thing is get a Pesach oven. That's the best suggestion. Either get a Pesach oven or don't cook in an oven on Pesach. If you want to, and you really want to bake in your oven, you don't have money to buy a Pesach oven, which, by the way, you can buy also, a small baking oven. It doesn't have to be a huge appliance. It can be a small baking oven that you use just for Pesach. But if you want to be technical and follow the letter of the law, then the following is the alternative to libun chamer. You clean the walls well, as you would always, clean it with a chametz-killing agent like bleach or stain remover. Dangerous stuff, be careful. And that's number one. Number two, you wait 24 hours. That's the general rule before doing koshering of hagala. You wait 24 hours. You wait 24 hours. You turn the oven on for at least an hour to the highest temperature, or use a blowtorch on the sides. And after that, you cover the walls. So we've done here, we try to do here all the insurance policies. We did a minimal type of koshering, not enough, because you have to do libun chamer, but still better than nothing. And we went ahead and we lined the entire oven with tin foil, so nothing will actually be touching the surface. The steam of the foods will only hit the tin foil, it won't hit the actual walls of the oven, so we're protected. So this is how it can be done, but again, the best thing is, the minhag is that we just either kosher it with libun chamer, or we get a Pesach oven, put it away. Ovens can be very difficult. If you have a self-cleaning oven, then just do self-cleaning, and you can use it exactly the way it is, you're good to go. A hot plate, a Shabbos plata. A hot plate obviously needs koshering, and it can be koshered. You can kosher it by doing, not hagala, but you can do what's called iriklirishin and iriklirishin. with Evan Malubin, which is, again, you pour boiling water on top of it, go over it with a iron, or just have it on very hot, and then when you pour the water, that itself is the stone. The surface itself is the stone. Okay, you have to be very careful, though, not short-circuiting it with the koshering process while you're doing that. Even after that is done, you should go ahead and cover it with a piece of tin foil, and you're good to go. Now, usually it's made of enamel, so it's not kosher material, okay? So therefore, you do what I said, and you go ahead and you cover it with with tin foil, so you make a separation, and then it's okay. If possible, as we usually mention with a lot of these things, the best thing is to just buy a new one for Pesach, have a Pesach one. I once gave a shiur about this in Beitar, and I said how you don't need to buy a new one, and you can just go ahead and kosher it, and either it's made of stainless steel, and you just pour water, or if it's made in enamel, and you pour water and cover it. And the Rav of the city wasn't too happy with my suggestion. He says, yes, it's true, but he wasn't very happy. Anyways, as I was koshering my hot plate that Erev Pesach, it short-circuited and broke, so I had to go out and buy a new one. So I said, it's your fault. I said, you owe me money. I told the Rav. I said, because of you, you had to say something. But nonetheless, in a time of need, 100%, it's not a problem. If you go ahead and clean it, kosher it, and cover it, it can be used. Microwaves, it's a big machlekes how to kosher it, if it's kosherable, if it needs to be koshered. Bottom line is like this. Ideally, one shouldn't use the old microwave for Pesach, meaning purchase a new one. If it's not possible, then he wants to use it, then the following is the way to do it. You put a cup of water inside, and you let it boil out. First you clean it. Step one is clean it. After it's clean, you don't use it for 24 hours. And after that, you boil water, you let water steam out into it for like 10 to 20 minutes, and then it's good. The best thing even in these cases, is to make sure that your food is hermetically sealed when it's inside the microwave. You cover in a way that the steam doesn't escape, and that makes consider as if it's in my microwave, but not in my microwave. So to also, going back to the oven, if you want to use your chametz oven and you want to go through those steps, another insurance policy is to get a oven insert, which is like a metal box, and you bake inside that metal box, and that prevents any of the food steam from escaping in somewhere else.
Where do you get one of those from?
I don't know. They used to sell them. I'm not sure anymore. I have no idea. I don't know. A fridge does not need to be koshered on any of the higher levels, just hadacha. That's all you need to do. You wash it, you clean it. Many people cover it with some kind of material. We've mentioned this in the past. Anything we're using to cover, we have to make sure it's not chametz stick, right? What would be the point of cleaning something for Pesach, getting rid of all the chametz, and then covering it with a nice sheet of chametz? So we have to make sure that the sheet is chametz-free, which practically means is that we should buy lining material. If it's PVC, doesn't have an issue. Tinfoil doesn't have an issue. But paper material does have an issue. If we're using a paper lining, we have to make sure that it has a kashrus hashgacha on it in order to verify that it did not go through a process of bleaching using starch, using chametz starch. Trash bags also. Trash bags you don't eat off the trash bag. Whoever's using anything for lining, you need to make sure it does not have a suspicion of starch. We have a video online about it, how you check. You don't, even if it doesn't have hashgacha, it's okay, just check. You use iodine, put some iodine on it. You'll see if it turns purple. If it turns purple, that's a sign you have starch. We still don't know what type of starch. Maybe it's chametz or it's kidney starch, but it's a suffix, so we don't use it. But if it's not, then it's not a problem. If it doesn't turn a different color, you're good to go.
Does that really work?
What, iodine? Of course it works. Sink, regarding the sink, so most sinks are not, if it's made of stainless steel, it's kosherable, you pour boiling water. If it's not made of stainless steel, which is most sinks, which are made of an enamel material, therefore the only way to kosher them is, they're not kosherable. They're usually made of porcelain or enamel. They're not kosherable, and what we'd have to do is just clean it out well, it doesn't hurt. Do the pouring boiling water to make everyone feel good. And then you have to put a sink insert, okay? Use a sink insert that separates between it. Technically, if you're makbid to never pour hot water into your sink and you're never going to let your dishes stay for 24 hours, you can technically get away of not having a sink insert and just using your chametz sink because, again, there's no transference of taste occurring. But nonetheless, the best thing is to have a sink insert. And even with the sink insert, everyone in the family should be aware we don't pour any hot water down the sink on Pesach. Which means if I boiled potatoes, I am going to wait for the water to cool off before I pour it into the sink. Now, instead of having boiling water in an area for a long time, which could be dangerous for children, the best thing is to mix it with cold water. Have another pot, have cold water, mix it until the water becomes warm, and then pour it down the sink. But don't pour hot water down the sink. It can trafe up your stuff, according to the Ramah, according to the Ashkenazi custom. Huh? Yeah, so if you have, there's rooms to be lenient even according to the Ramah, because we can say that in this situation, do you have a sink insert or you don't have a sink insert?
I've got sink inserts. I've always used sink inserts. So if boiling water's been poured down the sink with those in, are they now unusable?
No, I would not say it's unusable, no. It's, again, maximum case scenarios that would enter into the Machlekes Mechaber Ramah regarding non-Binyami, because obviously the chametz is past 24 hours, so according to Sfardim it's for sure okay, and even according to Ashkenazim, in Adin it's mutter, where the minig is to be machmer. Here it's a case of pouring, which has even a greater leniency, so for sure I wouldn't enter into a shiloh whether, if you went ahead and did it, whether your stuff is kosher. But initially, should it be avoided? 100% it should be avoided initially. We shouldn't pour anything hot into it because we have boiling hot kli rishon touching a chametz surface. It's unkosherable, so it wasn't koshered, and that enters into problems, and therefore it should be avoided in l'chatchila.
So I should get new inserts, do you think?
I don't know if you have to get new inserts, but from now on you should avoid doing pouring. Absolutely, avoid doing pouring.
So from now on it's okay.
Huh? Yes, we're up to questions. Okay, one more thing. Counters, we already discussed. Tables, okay, technically, tables don't have to be koshered if you never put chametz directly on them. Most people have, tablecloths on top of it. But nonetheless, so again, you don't have to kosher your table. You can just, clean it and cover it with a Pesach tablecloth. Tablecloths are koshered by putting them through the wash, okay, washing them. That's how you kosher them.
PVC down first, right?
You don't have to. You can just put tablecloths. Again, a table that I don't use, this table that never has direct chametz ever on it, I always have a tablecloth, then it doesn't need to be kosher. What does it need to be koshered for? So I go ahead, I just take this off, clean the table, put on new tablecloths or wash tablecloths that are kosher for Pesach, and you can then go ahead and use it.
Let's say bread directly on it.
Even so, it's cold bread.
Okay.
If you put hot pizza on top of your table, I agree with you, then you should kosher it. Yeah. If you want to kosher, you could. You want to be machmer. There's no issur to be machmer and kosher. Go ahead.
Hot ones, I wouldn't colour you put the bread on the table.
Directly?
Maybe.
Who puts anything directly on top of a wood table? I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Maybe.
People, if someone does.
Blame it on them.
We eat bread every day all over the place.
Right, so I agree. If hot bread is put directly, on a table, then if you don't want to, if you cover it, you still don't have a problem because it's covered.
I'm just going to put a plastic sheet on there, that's it.
A plastic sheet like this.
A thick one, yeah.
Yeah, so it's fine. It's
So
PVC,
a
similar.
stainless steel sink. All you have to do is kosher it.
Yeah, stainless steel is kosherable, so you pour boiling water on top of it. You don't need to have a sink insert. Okay.
What about, I heard the chametz in the sink. It seems like underneath.
So pour Drano. You can pour Drano or anything. It's all destroyed. All gets destroyed. Okay, questions. We're taking questions.
One more thing related to that. What if you have a disposal, like in America they have that disposal thing and it's plastic underneath and you need to get a new one?
What do you mean a disposal? You're talking about
disposal.
the area that all the food gathers under the sink? Again, pour Drano. Drano kills everything. It's unedible. It's inedible. It's considered destroyed. Even if there's a piece of chametz there, the chametz has been completely removed from state availability, so it's not considered chametz anymore. So it's not a problem, yeah.
About the spoon, about if I buy coffee, for instance, kosher for Pesach, I want to
Yes,
open it.
very good. So the law is like this. All kosher for Pesach foods that we've already opened during chametz times,
Yes.
unless we were 100% vigilant to make sure that no chametz comes near it,
Yes.
we cannot use it for Pesach.
Always vigilant.
Good. So if you were very careful, then what's the problem? It's kosher for Pesach.
So another quick question. My mother is really taking care of my grandmother that had a stroke in Florida for 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I know she's gonna go over there and try to clean for Pesach. Does she have to clean for her? For my grandmother? Is she like?
It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to help every Jew get rid of their chametz.
So somebody should like help her.
It's a mitzvah,
Okay,
absolutely. Is there a mitzvah involved? I mean, besides for kibbutz av or kibbutz savta, there's also a
No,
mitzvah.
she's really
okay.
good about it. I just
Good.
want to know, like, if does she have to do the whole thing, like, the letter, like she has
Listen,
to do
it's
her own-
not her obligation. It's the grandmother's
Right,
obligation,
but
but
should she though?
it's a good thing to do. Sure,
Okay, fine.
absolutely.
Thank you.
So I have two questions. One is, if you can't kosher your oven, can you double wrap things that you're?
Okay, so we already said before, if you can't kosher, just you do the steps I said earlier of the cleaning the walls, and then
Right, but
turning
I
on for the
think,
highest.
like covering with tinfoil, I have elements that are exposed.
So an alternative to covering the walls of the oven would be to cover the food. The point is that we don't want steam of the food hitting the oven walls, oven roof. So there's two ways of doing it. One way is cover the roof or cover the food. So if your food is covered with tin foil and the steam won't escape, then you're also okay.
Right, and the other question was about having an early Seder, like if there are kids little and
Right.
you gotta go to sleep, but you want them to have a Seder, so
Right.
what are the rules about that?
So the answer is that every Jew on earth, according to Halacha, is meant to have an early Seder, which means that as soon as it's nightfall, they are to be home and start Kaddish right away. So let's say now nightfall is, 7:40? Shkia, now that we switched the clock, is about 7 o'clock. So let's say 7:20, 7:30. As soon as it says Ekechavim, the best thing is to start Kaddish right away. You're not allowed to stay in shul and talk. Everyone has to start. That's everybody. Nothing to do if you have kids or not. It's the halacha. Now to start earlier than that, you can't. You're not allowed to begin Kaddish, which is the first of the 4 cups, before nightfall. The mitzvah only applies on nightfall. Now you think we have it bad. There's areas that they only reach nightfall at 11, 12 o'clock. I know that Rabbi Greenberg from Alaska. What's the city he's in? Anchorage? I don't remember. The capital of Alaska. Yeah?
Juneau, the capital of
Anchorage.
Alaska?
I think
That
he's
was
in
my joke.
Anchorage. Okay, I think he's in Anchorage. Doesn't matter. He's high up there. Okay, that's the
Juneau,
point.
the capital of
So they nightfall by them is like at 12 o'clock at night, and they do a public seder. There's nothing to do. But I wrote about this in my book. The only way to do it, a lot of shluchim have this problem in Russia. All the north areas of the world. The only way to do it is invite them already early. What are you going to invite someone for a meal at 12 o'clock at night? So you invite them already. We're starting the program at 9 o'clock. Keep them busy, jokes,
my God.
speak about the
Smart work.
Agada. And then,
3 hours.
12 o'clock you start Kaddish. There's no other way. You don't fulfill any mitzvahs until it's actual nighttime. So there's no way of escaping that.
Wow.
Next. No more questions? Yeah.
You're selling your hummus. You're selling it. We also have stuff back in New York.
Say it again.
We sell the hummus.
Right.
We sell what we have here, and then we also have hummus in New York or pots. with
So
hummus
when
in
you
it.
sell here, include in your sale their home in New York. Write it down.
Okay, so the timing is going to be different when you buy.
There's
it.
nothing wrong with selling your chametz earlier. The only problem is selling your chametz later. So if you were in New
Yeah.
York, and if you were in New York and asked me this question in New York, I would tell you no, sell your chametz in Israel. But since you're in Israel, right?
Yeah, but we're finishing early.
I understand, but you don't buy it back. It's only considered, first, number one, the Rabbanim don't buy it back for those who have chametz elsewhere. They only buy it back for those who Pesach is over for them. They say explicitly it's not considered bought back until Pesach. But even if they did, it doesn't matter because you don't have intent for it to be bought back by you. In order for you to acquire something, you have to be a willing participant. If I don't want to acquire something, then no one can force me to acquire it. So the guy doesn't have jurisdiction over me, and no one else does. So if I don't want to buy this chametz back until chametz is over for me in New York, then I'm not buying it back. The rabbi and him can do whatever they want. It's not mine. I have nothing to do with their sale. When will I have something to do with it? When the sale is over. When Pesach is over for me in New York.
Matzo ball. All right, so we're not doing the box.
Right.
But it's a tradition, well, at least it was a tradition in New York for the last day of Pesach, which
Right.
we don't have here anyway.
Right.
But now it's on Shabbos, the last day. And
This year again,
Yes.
Shvi Shel Pesach falls, right, Achon Shabbat. So 100%, you can have matzah balls. Then we've discussed this in previous years. What I said that can be done is that during Pesach, during Chol Hamoed Pesach, not on Yontif, but during Chol Hamoed, let's say Erev Shvi Shel Pesach Thursday, you can make matzah balls and cook them and then eat them on Shabbos. That is not a problem.
Okay.
To make them though on Erev Pesach, on Pesach is a problem. To make them on Yontif is a problem because you can't eat it on Yontif. So how can you cook something on Yontif when you can't eat it? I'll mention regarding Rav Landa, Neighbor just passed away, Alav Shalom, so I'll mention something with him regarding this matter. There was this occurrence happened a few years ago. Also, it happens every few years, and so someone publicized that you can go ahead on another Rav publicized you can go ahead on Yontif and make the matzah balls and cook them for Shabbos. And I asked him, I said, what are you doing? What are you telling? You're entering people into big machlekes. Why are you telling people to do this? Just doing during Chol Hamoed. What are you doing? So he said, that's the Messiah received from Lando. So I told him, I'm going to call up Rav Lando. I'm going to ask him. So I asked Rav Lando. He said, never such a thing. He ever said such a thing before in his life. He said they would never do such a thing to cook a brachas on Yantiv, chas v'shalom. So he completely denied and disavowed what was stated in his name. And so either people don't eat gebrachs in such a situation, or they prepare Chol Hamoed. No, why not? What do you do in New York? What do you do in Chutz La'aretz, where they cook in the Pesach pots? They're not taking out the chametz pots on Achon Shel Pesach. You're not allowed to eat chametz. They're using the Pesach pots to cook gebrachs. We're not machmer with gebrachs for next year. Yeah, for that year you don't use it again. Correct. Okay, so you designate a pot that you're going to make the matzah balls in, and you're not going to use that pot for the rest of Pesach, which is for the whole rest of the 24 or whatever odd hours left, and that's it.
But that's true for Chutz La'aretz also, that they can't cook it on Yontif because it goes into Shabbos.
Absolutely.
Right, so
Sure.
everybody eats it.
Yes. Also there.
It's interesting.
Also there, it should not be cooked on Yontiv. It enters into a big machlekes, especially for Chabad Chassidim who treat gebrachs even worse than chametz. There's nothing worse than being gebrach. Gebrachs is the worst. It's even worse than chametz in a certain sense, the way we treat it. So to go ahead and cook it on Pesach, on Yontiv, you can't. You have to cook on Yontiv is for things that you can eat on Yontiv. You're cooking something that you would never dream of eating in a million years. So how can you go ahead and cook it? So therefore, the best thing is to cook it during Chol Hamoed, where you don't have this problem, and avoid entering into the dispute, into the issue.
Right, so also for the Shabbos that's after Pesach already, can we keep kidney stick kosher with Pesach stuff?
Kidneys you can own anytime on Pesach, anywhere in the world. Ashkenazim who don't eat kidneys only don't eat kidneys. We do own kidneys. There's nothing wrong with owning kidneys. I'm allowed to own rice. I'm allowed to own hummus or trina. There's nothing wrong with owning it. The issue is only with eating it. So if you're asking, can I own it? 100%. Now, can I eat it on Achron Shel Pesach? Sorry. Can I eat it on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael? After Shvi Shel Pesach, the answer is yes, because it is no longer Pesach, so I no longer have a prohibition against eating it. The Isra of kidneys for Ashkenazim doesn't apply after Pesach. So just like you can eat hummus today, you can eat it on Shabbos after Pesach. It's not a problem.
What about like being around? So it's a personal thing. Like sometimes I'm around family members that like have their little things they do that I would not do. Like they like have their coffees that like I'm not going to at Pesach, and they have like not medicine, but like these mixtures of like I don't know to help them have their body work better, whatever certain mixtures they take, and they use those like those cups on the counters. Like, is that trace anything up? Is it a problem? Things aren't kosher for Pesach.
She's asking regarding what's the attitude towards non-kosher for Pesach products, and the answer is like this: if it's a food product, then the attitude is very serious because today's food industry is very complex. It's very, very complex, and there's a lot of trace ingredients out there that contain chametz. And someone who came from the Amazon for the first time to the real world and says, "Oh, I read the ingredients. Doesn't say chametz on it." Again, that's a person who woke up from the Amazon after 50 years living there. But anyone who lives in the real world knows that there's trace ingredients that, according to law, under 2% doesn't have to be recorded. And if so, we have absolutely zero clue what trace ingredients they're putting, and there could be thousands of them. There could be thousands of trace ingredients in a food. It's unbelievable. And a lot of times, trace ingredients are derived from grain. And if so, that's a problem. So if it doesn't have a kosher for Pesach hashgacha, and there's a suspicion of trace ingredients, then 100% we have to treat it as chametz. You have to treat it as chametz. I'll give an example. A person says, "What's wrong with black pepper? Black pepper isn't chametz. Pepper. You ever saw black pepper? You take the balls and you smash them and crush them, and it's black pepper. Why on earth do I need a hashgacha on black pepper?" So you tell the person the answer is because black pepper without a hashgacha may be black wheat.
Oh, I thought we're not even supposed to use spices on.
I'm just saying, I'm explaining that people are very naive. People don't understand the food industry, and they think that when it says black pepper, that it's actually 100% black pepper. Maybe it's 100% black pepper, and maybe it's 30% black pepper and 70% flour. They mix in. They mix in in order to, first of all, a lot of times it's made in the same plants, and even if it's not, they mix in purposely because it's cheaper to sell flour than to sell black pepper. So, you don't know what's going on in the market, and if you get fooled, it's a real suspicion. Also black pepper, also cumin. There's a lot of spices that we have this suspicion. And because of this, 100%, we should be very careful that everything has a hashgacha, and we shouldn't let any of our Pesach vessels be used with Pesach foods that don't have a hashgacha. I agree with you. You can buy potatoes with their peels without a hashgacha. I agree with you. In Chutzlar, it's no problem. In Israel, you have Trumas and Maisa, you have a problem. But if they're, let's say, imported potatoes from Idaho, selling here in Sfas, no problem. They don't need hashgacha. I agree. They don't need hashgacha. What's the chance? What are they going to do to the potato? We haven't heard of anything that they do to the potatoes, but anything that's processed, doesn't have hashgacha, who knows what went through it?
So what do you do, like, if it's, let's say if someone has it and you don't really know, they put it in your counter, like.
No, again, the counter, so you clean it up. You clean it up. Doesn't trafe. If it wasn't hot, and it doesn't trafe. Again, I understand. It's not. Is it directly touching? Even if it spills.
I'm not going to encourage their chametz.
Right. Yeah, you can, but the best thing is also, I bought you an alternative coffee that's kosher for Pesach. There's this coffee doesn't have, ground coffee doesn't need to be kosher for Pesach. Ground coffee is not a problem at all. Ground coffee, Turkish coffee, it's not a problem at all. It doesn't need kosher for Pesach. There's no chashash. From what we haven't yet discovered that they started cheating us and putting flour in the coffee. It hasn't been discovered yet. If it ever is discovered, then yes, this halacha will change. But to this date, it has not yet been discovered, so ground coffee doesn't need a hashgacha, not during the year, not during Pesach. However, if you're buying ground coffee in a store that sells spices, maybe they ground their coffee in the same area that they ground their grains. So of course, then it needs a hashgacha. I'm talking about ground coffee that you're buying, directly from a coffee manufacturer. There's no suspicion, that's not a problem. But granulated coffee, instant coffee, it can be made in many different ways. Sometimes they have preservatives that can be chametzik, and therefore it does need hashgacha for Pesach for those who eat it. So why would someone has to be stubborn and eat non-kosher for Pesach coffee? Just get with the kosher for Pesach. What's the big deal? It's a few extra words are written on the thing. It's all the same taste, and it covers the problem.
Medication, is there a list?
Every year they update the list and they put it out. I don't have it yet. I'm sure they usually put it out Rosh Chodesh Nisan time or a little later. So you be in touch with online and also with your kupa. They all have lists. Milchedet puts out, Klali puts out with Rav Roshid Yisrael. But the general rule is as follows: if you are sick, first of all, number one, if you have something you take for high blood pressure, kidneys, anything that can be possibly dangerous, you continue taking it on Pesach if there is no alternative that is kosher for Pesach. If you don't have any alternative, of course, the Kanas Nefashis pushes off chametz, and you are allowed to, and you have to go ahead and take it. However, generally, there are pills that are kosher for Pesach who are part of the list that are cleared from chametz issue that you can just look up and go through. But all that is a hiddur. Min hadin. Okay, you are allowed to take swallowable pills. If you are sick, you're allowed to take them without looking into them. If I need an Advil, I have a headache, I'm allowed to take swallowable pills without thinking twice. The reason is because swallowing is not considered a way of derech, of achila, of eating, and we considered also the chametz in it destroyed. When was the last time you saw dogs licking on medicines? They don't exactly, they don't eat medicines. It's not roy for achilas kelev. Due to all these reasons, the chacham were not strict regarding medicines for a sick person. Nonetheless, today we have the list available. We can simply look at the list. It's a good hiddur. We look at the list, we make sure, and we go ahead and take it. Vitamins, those very different. Vitamins are off the list. Vitamins are just supplements. They'll have a lot of chashashas of chametz. They also have a lot of chashashas of other things for during the year. They need a hashgacha for Pesach. They need a hashgacha for during the year. And we don't get the sick heter out of them because they're often chewables. And even when they're not chewables, they're not medication. They're just supplements. So that is something that you should be machmer with, certainly regarding vitamins.
Some brands like Silver, they say on all their things no wheat involved, no wheat, no whatever. Right.
they're kosher.
For Pesach?
No, I don't know kosher, but I'm saying, but they say on it, no wheat. Can you like?
Well, what about barley? What about spelt? What about rye? What about oats? There's
Yeah,
5
they
wheats
say
that can become chametz.
some dairy products that even contain like corn syrup and so hopefully the stores, shops, supermarkets, whatever will shut that down, that area, so you
Yeah.
can be like safe.
Hopefully.
You have to be careful because there's all, Sephardim eat kitnius.
Corn syrup in it or
Sephardim eat kitnius, and by them, it's say kosher for Pesach for Sephardim. So you have to, also be on top of your Pesach diet, as we say. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We should all have a Chag Kosher v'Sameach, a blessed holiday where we clean our physical and our spiritual chametz. Right? Let's not forget that too.
Is this book sold here?
My wife. Ask my wife.
What about it? Where is it sold?
She's asking if she wants to buy one.
You sold the one you brought?
She's buying it. Yeah. She's taking it. This is Lewis.
I'm not gonna buy it right now, but I'm just wondering.
I have it on.
Okay.
I have 2 more left.
Okay. So okay. Don't reserve for me. I'm not sure. I'm just wondering.
buy all
Okay.
this stuff.
There's nothing to wonder. It's a good book.
No, I want to.